Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Yogaha karmasu kaushalam.
Hello students, my name is Ishan Shinolikar and today I will be talking about demand analysis part 1, which will extend over 3 parts. Let us start with the objectives of this session. First is introduction to the concept of demand. Second, definition and the overall concept of demand as studied in economics. Further, the types of demand, factors affecting demand, the law of demand as it is stated, the demand schedule and demand curve, movement along the demand curve versus shift in demand curve, and exceptions to the law of demand. So, let us start with the first topic, that is introduction to demand. Demand is one of the fundamental concepts in economics and business studies. It forms the foundation of market analysis and pricing strategies. Understanding demand helps businesses make informed decisions about production, pricing and marketing. In simple terms, demand represents the desire and ability to consumers to purchase goods and services at different price levels during a specific period of time. It is not just wanting something but having the purchasing power to buy it as well. The study of demand analysis helps businesses understand consumer behavior, predict market trends and optimize their operations for maximum profitability. Now, let us look at the definition and concept of demand. So, if we look at the economic definition, then demand refers to the quantity of commodity that a consumer is willing and able to purchase at a given price during a specific period of time. So, the key elements of this definition or the concept that we call as demand are desire, that is the consumer must want that product. Next is purchasing power. The consumer also must possess the financial ability to buy that product. Next is willingness to pay. The consumer must be ready to spend that amount of money for the good. And the time period, that is demand is always related to a specific time frame. Further, we also have price, that is demand varies with different price levels. Now, let us quickly identify one important aspect here and differentiate between a want and demand. So, want is merely a desire for something. Demand is a want basically, which is backed by purchasing power and the willingness to pay. For example, many people may want or may desire a luxury car, but only those who can afford it and are willing to pay for it create actual demand. Let us now move to the different types of demand. Based on nature of goods, we have the following types of demand. First is individual demand. The quantity of good demanded by a single consumer at various prices during a specific time period is called individual demand. It typically refers to one particular individual. Then we have market demand, that is the total quantity of goods demanded by all consumers in the market at various prices during a specific time period. It is the horizontal summation of all individual demands. So, this constitutes for the entire market. When you consider all individuals and sum them up, you get the market demand. Now, we move on to based on relationship with other goods. So, first is independent demand. It is that kind of demand which is not affected by the demand for another good. For example, demand for books and demand for shoes, they have nothing in common. Then joint demand, or also called complementary demand. When goods are demanded together because they complement each other, is referred to as complementary demand. For example, cars and petrol, printers and ink cartridges, and so on. We also have competitive demand, that is substitute demand, when goods can be used in place of each other. For example, tea and coffee, butter and margarine. These can be used in place of each other, unlike together. Then you also have composite demand. When a good has multiple uses and it's demanded for different purposes. For example, milk is demanded for direct consumption, making cheese, butter, and so many products. Now we also have demand on the basis of time period. So in that context, the definitions are as follows. First, we have short term demand. Demand that can be satisfied immediately or in a very short period is known as short term demand. If we look at the long term demand, then the demand that takes time to develop and satisfy, often involving durable goods. We have further demand based on necessity, which is also called autonomous demand. So demand that exists independently of other factors, it is called autonomous demand. It includes necessities like food, clothing, shelter, and so on. Moving on to derived demand, the demand that arises from the demand for another good. For example, demand for raw materials derives from demand for finished goods, and hence it is derived, and that is what is called a derived demand. Now let us look at the factors affecting demand. Understanding the factors that influence demand is crucial for businesses and to predict and respond to market changes. First, we have price of good. The most important factor affecting demand generally is the price of good. So generally when prices increase, demand decreases, and vice versa. The inverse relationship forms the basis of the law of demand. Then we have income of the consumer. So if we consider a particular type of goods which are called normal goods, as income increases, demand decreases. This is the most common case. For example, branded clothes, smartphones, and so on. Then we also have another type of good which are called inferior goods. So as income increases, the demand decreases. Consumers now feel that these kind of goods are becoming cheaper and inferior given their income status. As a result, they tend to not consume them. For example, low quality products, public transport for high income earners. Then we have prices of relative goods. For example, if we take substitute goods, then increase in price of tea may increase demand for coffee. Considering complementary goods, increase in price of cars may decrease demand for petrol, because since they go together, one is costly, so you do not want to spend on its counterpart which goes together. Whereas in substitutes, when one gets costlier, you would want to spend on something else which is cheaper. Now let us look at the aspect of tastes and preferences. Changes in consumer preferences, fashion, trends, and lifestyle choices significantly affect demand. Marketing and advertising play crucial roles in shaping preferences. Population and demographics are also important. Larger the population means higher demand. Age distribution, gender ratio, and other demographic factors also influence demand patterns. So typically when a country's population is growing, demand can be estimated to be growing in a certain period of time. If we consider future expectations, then if consumers expect prices to rise in the future, current demand may increase. Similarly, expectations about income changes also affect demand. If you expect your income to rise in the future, you may not demand goods and services now, wait for some time and then demand them at a later stage when you have higher level of income. Looking at the seasonal factors, we can say that demand for many products varies with seasons. For example, ice cream in summer, you will find that there is a very high demand, whereas in winters you find lesser number of people going to ice cream stores. Similarly, woolen clothes are only demanded in winter and not in summer, as there is no need. So these products qualify for seasonal demand, or the demand also follows a seasonal pattern. Next, we have government policies. So taxes, subsidies, and regulations can significantly impact demand. For example, higher taxes on cigarettes reduce their demand. This is typically what they follow in public policy, that is, for addictive goods they try to tax them so that the price goes up and people reduce the consumption. Now let us try and understand the law of demand. The law of demand is one of the most fundamental principles in economics. Let us look at the statement of the law. The statement says that other things remaining constant, that is also called ceteris paribus, the quantity demanded of a good increases when its price falls or decreases, when its price rises. Let us look at the assumptions of this law of demand. First is ceteris paribus, meaning all other factors should remain constant. There is no change in consumers' income, there is no change in consumers' tastes and preferences, and there is no change in price of related goods. Further, there is no expectation as well of future price change which affects demand, and there is no change in population. Now let us look at the reasons for this law of demand. First is substitution effect, that is, when price of a good falls, it becomes relatively cheaper compared to substitutes, leading to increased demand. The second is income effect. When price falls, consumers' real income increases, allowing them to buy more of the good. Then we also have the law of diminishing marginal utility, that is, as consumption increases, additional satisfaction decreases. So consumers are willing to pay lower prices for additional units. New customers. Lower prices attract new customers who couldn't afford the product at higher prices. Multiple uses. When price falls, consumers may use the product for additional purposes, that is more purposes. Now let us quickly look at a demand schedule and a demand curve. So if we look at the demand schedule, then a demand schedule is a table showing the relationship between price and quantity demanded, keeping all the other factors constant. An example of demand schedule is given as follows. So this table tells you how the quantity demanded is changing, that is increasing from 10 all the way up to 50 against the drop in price. If you look at it from the other way around, as price increases, quantity demanded falls. That is the law of demand presented in a tabular form. Now we move to the demand curve. A demand curve is a graphical representation of the demand schedule, that is, you plot the graph. It shows the relationship between price, that is y axis, and quantity demanded, which is on the x axis. Typically this is how it is taken. This figure shows you the demand curve. As you can see, it is a downward sloping demand curve representing the schedule that we had, that is, as the price increases, the quantity demanded falls. If you look at it from reverse, as the price decreases, the quantity demanded rises. So typically this is how the demand curve looks like. Now what are the characteristics of a demand curve? First is that it slopes downwards from left to the right. It shows inverse relationship between price and quantity. Each point represents a particular price quantity combination. Now let us look at the types of demand curves. First is individual demand curve. As we saw earlier as well, it shows demand of one consumer. Then we have market demand curve, which is an aggregate or horizontal summation. Now we move to market demand schedule. In terms of market demand schedule, market demand is derived by horizontally adding individual demand schedules of all consumers in the market. If consumer A demands 2 units at 5 and consumer B demands 3 units at 15, then the market demand at rupees 5 is 5 units. So you can imagine the shape will be the same, however the demand curve will just shift in some direction. It will be drawn at a different direction. Now let us look at the difference between movement along the same demand curve and shift in the demand curve. So by definition, change in quantity demanded due to change in price alone, while other factors remain constant, will lead to movement. Let us look at the types. Expansion of demand. Increase in quantity demanded due to fall in price is called expansion of demand, whereas decrease in quantity demanded due to increase in price is called contraction of demand. So if you imagine a graphical representation from our same graph, movement occurs along the same demand curve from one point to another. Whereas if we look at shift in the demand curve, then change in demand due to other factors than the price, such as income preferences and so on. So price is not changing, but now other factors change and that changes the demand. So the type over here is increase in demand instead of expansion. That is, graphically if you imagine, there will be a rightward shift of the entire demand curve. and decrease in demand says a leftward shift in the entire demand curve. What are the causes of rightward shift? Increase in consumer income. For normal goods, generally you will buy more at the same price if your income goes up. Then favorable changes in tastes and preferences. Increase in price of substitute goods. Decrease in price of complementary goods and positive future expectations lead to increase in demand. Now what are the causes of leftward shift? Decrease in consumer income, that is particularly for normal goods, unfavorable change in tastes, decrease in price of substitute goods, increase in price of complementary goods, and negative future expectations would lead to decrease in demand. Now let us look at the exceptions to the law of demand. While the law of demand generally holds true, there are certain exceptional cases when the law may not apply. First is Giffen goods. Named after economist Robert Giffen, these are inferior goods that constitute a major portion of consumers' budget. When prices rise, demand may also rise. For example, basic food items for poor households. If price of rice increases, poor families may reduce consumption of more expensive alternatives and buy more amount of rice. Now what are the conditions for Giffen goods? First, it must be an inferior good. It should form a substantial part of consumers' budget. There should be no close substitutes available. The next exception is caused by Veblen goods or conspicuous consumption. Named after economist Thorstein Veblen, these are luxury goods where higher prices increase their appeal as status symbols. For example, designer jewelry, luxury cars, expensive perfumes. Higher prices enhances the prestige value for these goods, making it more desirable for status conscious consumers. Then we have speculative demand. In speculative markets, people may buy more when prices are rising, expecting further increases. Stocks, real estate during boom periods and cryptocurrency also follow the trend. During emergency situations or shortages, people may buy more even at higher prices due to fear of future unavailability. For example, essential medicines during epidemics, food items during natural disasters. Then quality perception. Sometimes consumers associate higher prices with better quality, leading to increased demand at higher prices. For example, perfumes, medicines, etc. Generally, if they are expensive, it means better quality for some consumers. Then seasonal goods. For certain seasonal goods, demand may increase even when prices rise during peak season. Hotel bookings, for example, during holiday seasons, umbrella sales during monsoons follow the trend. So if we summarize this session, then demand analysis forms the cornerstone of economic understanding and business decision making. The key concepts covered include: demand is the quantity consumers are willing and able to purchase at various prices. Multiple factors affect demand, including price, income, preferences, and related goods prices as well. The law of demand establishes inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Demand can be represented through demand schedules and demand curves for analytical purposes. Changes in price causes movements along the demand curve, whereas changes in other factors cause shifts. Several exceptions to the law of demand exist in special circumstances. So concluding the session, we can say understanding these concepts enables business students or BBA students to analyze market behavior, predict consumer responses, and make informed strategic decisions in their future careers. Further, we are going to see additional parts of demand analysis 2 and 3, where you will learn more about different types, kinds, and the scenario of demand in the current situation. That's where you get a complete perspective. I hope you understood and enjoyed the session. Thank you so much.